pressures, and D, implication. We have repercussions as a final answer. So we have with threatening repercussions. Human-induced climate change. Human-induced climate change has awakened widespread now. Human-induced climate change has awakened widespread concern across the globe. As a matter of fact, climate change is now dash A, unacceptable, B, a foremost, C, the only, and D, the last. The answer is the only. So we have a climate change is now the only global issue. It is a major test of Africa's dash A, popularity, B, energy, C, ingenuity, and D, incapability. The answer is option D, which is incapability. So we have it is a major test of Africa's incapability. The fourth assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel in Climate Change confirmed that human actions are harming the Earth's climate and creating major disturbances in human dash A, geography, B, society, C, system, and D, life. The answer is option C, which is life. We have creating major disturbances in human system and ecosystem. The IPCC reports that the world has warmed by an average of 76 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial times. The rising global dash A, command, B, demand, C, warming, and D, supply. The answer is supply. And then we have the rising global supply for energy and the adverse changes in the climate puts the Earth and its inhabitants in a catch-22 situation. Again, if the effects of climate change on each were commensurate with the level of greenhouse, A, structure, B, paint, C, emotion, and D, emissions, the answer is paint. And then we have greenhouse paint in spills out. Perhaps Africa would have been spared and would probably be just an amused spectator. But as it is, this is not the case. Here again, we see well-meaning global citizens appealing for the rest of the world to take responsibility for the problems of Africa, a strategy that cannot, thus far, termed dash A, notable, B, liable, C, credible, and D, flexible. The answer is credible. So we have termed credible. And this marks the last question under comprehension passages for 2011 UTM use of English, paper type C. 2010 UTM use of English. The paper type is A. Now to question 2. According to the writer, the exciting thing about Spaceship Earth is that it A. has no instruction manual, B. is not difficult to maintain, C. is peculiar to other automobiles, and D. is relatively easy to operate. The answer, according to the passage, is option A. It states that it has no instruction manual. Question 3. The absence of instruction manual in Spaceship Earth dash A. made the operation of Spaceship Earth difficult, B. forced man to devise other means of traveling in spacecraft, C. challenged man's inquisitiveness, and D. made man helpless. The answer is option A, which is made the operation of the Spaceship Earth difficult. Question 4. From the passage, it can be deduced that man dash A. learned by experience and deduction, B. Learned by chance and accidentally. C. Is incapable of solving all his problems. And D. By his nature is in constant search of knowledge. The answer is option A, which is learns by experience and deduction. Question 5. This question has to do with the mood of the writer, and the mood can be discovered through an in-depth reading of the passage. You read the passage and know the attitude, what you feel when you read the passage. So the question reads, the writer's mood in the passage is that of A. Non-committal, B. Pessimism, C. Optimism, and D. Frustration. The answer is optimism, which is option C. Passage 2. The second passage is an adaptation from Vanguard dated 19 March 2018. To the next question, we have question 6. The expression stress is an issue everybody can relate to experimentally means that A. It is better understood when experienced. B. Its problems can be solved by everybody. C. Everybody avoids it. D. Everybody encounters it. The expression actually means that the problems of stress can be solved by everybody, meaning everybody can solve the problem of stress. So the expression stress is an issue everybody can relate to experimentally means that anybody can handle stress. And the final answer is option B. Question 7. Which of the following is true according to the passage? A. Stress is mostly caused by internal factors. B. Stress can only be avoided during relaxation. C. Stress is better handled by the individual. D. The issue of stress can be solved with no effort. The answer is option C, which is stress is better handled by individual, based on your experience. Question 8. According to the passage, the major step in controlling stress is A. Changing one's attitude to stressors. B. Understanding the history of the disease. C. Visiting the family doctor for checkup and treatment. D. Constant exercise to dissipate every energy. The answer is option B, which states that in controlling stress, you have to understand the history of the disease. Question 9. The experts feel one can control one's stress because A. Its causes are understandable. B. It is not difficult to control. C. External factors contribute less to stress. And D. It is individually initiated. The answer is option D because it begins with an individual. An individual initiates stress. So option D is the final answer. Question 10. From the passage, it can be deduced that stress is A. Hormonal disorder in the body system. B. Individually induced problems. C. Bodily reactions to internal factors. D. Bodily reaction to external factor. The answer is option A, which states that stress is an hormonal disorder in the body system. Passage 3. This is an adaptation from This Day newspaper, dated 28 October 2007. Question 11. According to the writer, corruption is triggered off by A. Unnecessary affluence, B. Selfish interests, C. Private officials, and D. Public officers. The answer is option C because it is stated in the passage that private officials are the ones that trigger off corruption. So our final answer is option C. Question 12. From the passage, one of the consequences of corruption is that A. Large projects are executed. B. It is beneficial to wealthy people who stole public wealth. C. It impedes the progress of a nation. D. People get what they want with so much money to spend. Option D is our final answer because it is indicated in the passage that when corruption is in place in a particular country, people will get what they want with so much money to spend. So option D is a final answer. Question 13. Who, according to the passage, should prevent corruption? A. Lawyers and police. B. Corrupt public officers. C. The government, and D. the people? The answer is option D, which is the people. The writer of the passage recommends that people in a particular country should prevent corruption and not lawyers, police, or public officers. Question 14. Which of the following is an indication of ethical standard of governance? Option A. Fundamental human rights. B. Socio-economic instability. C. Democratic governance. And D. Bloated expenditure. The answer is socio-economic instability as indicated in the passage. Question 15. The essence of fighting corruption according to the passage is A. Send the corrupt to go. B. Promote good governance. C. Punish corrupt politicians. And D. Make people richer. The essence of fighting corruption according to the passage is to promote good governance. Passage 4. This passage is an adaptation from Oluipe BOA et al. 2005, and it is taken from the book of this individual, which is titled Intensive English for Senior Secondary Schools, published in Onitsha. Drought is a word that invokes strong emotions. It is not surprising as the dash A. Ideology, B. Phenomenon, C. Idea, D. Component. The answer is phenomenon, and that is what suits the context. So we have this is not surprising as a phenomenon is usually accompanied by a number of unpleasant developments. The developments have dash A. Feedback, results, implications, and outcome. The answer is implication. So we have these developments have implications for all citizens, starting from the peasant farmers to the state and federal governments, which may be plunged into emergency and crisis situations, which, if not successfully, dash A. Managed, B. Manipulated, C. Examined, and D. Studied. The answer to this is managed. So we have if not successfully managed, could result in social unrest. The timeliness of the onset of the rains in various regions of the country and their adequate distribution thereafter have become dash A. Objects, B. Subjects, C. Issues, and D. Topics. The answer to this is objects, and we have an adequate distribution thereafter have become objects of considerable anxiety to all people. The fact, however, is that periodic reduction in the normal dash A. Amount, B. Supply, C. Size, and D. Flood. And the answer to this is amount. So we have the fact, however, is that periodic reduction in the normal amount of rainfall in the country is not new. Since large areas of the country are drought prone, the consequences are dash A. Effective, B. Disastrous, C. Evident, and D. Inevitable. The answer is disastrous, and dry spells could be very severe. There are two aspects of coping with drought. One has to do with emergency measures and the other with A. Routine, B. Organized, and C. Urgent, and D. Delayed measures. The answer to this is option B, which is organized measures. An immediate consequence of any drought would be famine. In addition, where whole populations are forced to abandon their lands or pastures in search of food, there are bound to be other lasting and dash A. Longitudinal, B. Objective, C. Simultaneous, and D. Parallel. The answer to this is parallel. So we have other lasting and parallel consequences such as distress, sales of cattle by livestock owners in order to buy food. Government should provide farmers with agricultural inputs and ensure that they have easy access to those inputs under the relief dash A. Action, B. Process, C. Scheme, and D. Plan. The answer to question 44 is scheme. So we have under the relief scheme, emergency measures will be much more dash: A. Normal, B. Correct, C. Idealistic, and D. Effective. So the answer to that is effective. So we have emergency measures will be much more effective if a mechanism is established to ensure adequate preparedness and defense against the occurrence of droughts. So that marks the end of comprehension reading for 2010 UTME Use of English Past Question, paper A.